right. Hey, good morning. Welcome back. I'm Jason. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we do this every week. We get together to have some coffee and talk product stuff. This week we're having a little bit of fun here, and if you were with us last week, you saw that we did a big demonstration of some of the Claude Code or Claude Cowork, product management skill and plugin. We walked through several use cases of things that you could do to accelerate, and we put that into a real product management workflow as opposed to just demonstrating, hey, it can create a PRD for you. And at the end of the session yesterday, we gave away, or last week, we gave away a few licenses to Claude Cowork. They were they were 1 week 1 week licenses, and we've got back with us today in the virtual studio Mansour Abbas, who was one of the winners last week, and he dug into Claude Code. Now, Mansour has had a pretty wide variety of experience, and in product management in general, and he's also got some of his own things that he's working on. So he's going to share with us this morning what he learned with Claude Code in the last week, what he tried, and how it worked out for him. So, Mansour, welcome. Glad to have you back here with us this week. Tell us about what happened. What did you think? What did you think of Claude Cowork?
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah, I started using it yesterday because I've been busy with work, and I find it very interesting because number one, it gives me the opportunity to put my product management skill into use rather than just putting random stuff on ChatGPT, letting it do the work for me. And then the other thing is, I noticed it has a direct integration with my computer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm able to point it directly to files or to specific folder in my computer, and then it just iterate from there. So unlike the other AI solutions that I've used, whereby I have to build a knowledge base by uploading my documents. So it's because it have direct access to my computer, I could just put all the document that I need and then just start iterating from there. And then the other part of it is the agentic workflow, which makes life a lot more easier because rather than just taking a deep dive, it feels like I'm talking to a human, such that before it goes ahead and implements a solution, it asks me a couple of questions like, "Would you like to do this? Have you considered this and that?" And then we're able to go from there. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I found that very interesting.
So not even so it even challenged you to reconsider some of the perspectives you had and some of the ideas you had, and said, "Hey, this might be a better way to look at it." That's great.
Right, right.
We did the 30 days of AI project I guess a couple months ago now, and it was all about learning to use AI as your thought partner. And now Claude Coworks taking that even a step higher, helping you use it as a thought partner, but also really doing some significant work for you too. You had it create some things for you too, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I started was, well, like last time when I joined the program. So I intended to come up with a product based off of primary market research, but unfortunately I couldn't get to the primary market research area because of busy with work. So I decided to pivot into the secondary market research, and then I was focusing on was on the airline industry. The goal of this project was to first of all understand what are the major challenges in the airline industry. So I use databases from my database comprises of YouTube, Reddit, Department of Transportation, and whatnot. The idea is to understand what are the various challenges people are facing in this industry, and then do a more or less like a categorization, and then do that data based off of the fact that once I identify which area folk people are complaining about, then I did a sentiment analysis
Mm-hmm.
and then checked the what's it called, the willingness to pay. So as a product manager, before we solve a problem, the number one goal is to make sure that people are willing to pay for this problem.
Mm-hmm.
So once I identify which area people are willing to pay, then the next step is just go down the line, like understanding, okay, what are the market segments? went ahead and created identified 5 personas for that particular segment. And then at that level, we're beginning to interact with the persona, like, okay, what would this person really care about? And based off of that, I was able to come up with a company called Sotivo. And this is a name that I made sure I benchmark it against trademarks to make sure that we're not infringing on other companies' trademark. I did the what's it called? I did a product full life cycle analysis,
Mm-hmm.
went deeper into the customer journey analysis, and then the other part which I find interesting is the aspect of the finance, where you're looking at the business model. Like, okay, if we're to launch this product, what sort of technology stack do we need? How much do we need to pay? And then you start getting to the aspect of technology strategy. Should we buy this technology or should we do something in-house? And then how long will it take for us before we start making money?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the sort of stuff that I went into real deep. But for this project, I only focused on the 0 to 90 day plan.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And and what were the results? Were you happy with the results? Did they feel like they accelerated you?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I started this stuff. I started around past 5.
Mm-hmm.
I did it all the way till 12 a.m. last night. And yeah, it's the whole thing was just real quick. I mean, I just to let you know what I did. I did not use ChatGPT or anything. Everything was done within the cloud. It started off with, okay, this is what we're trying to solve. Give me a plan. And then as we move on it with each plan, I'm able to like vet it. Like, oh yeah, this plan makes sense. Okay, this one, add this to this. So for instance, there was a time when I was working on the brand positioning statement. And then I noticed it was adding some stuff along the line of, oh, we're going to use AI to do this. That didn't sit well with me because I don't want its solution to feel like, oh, we're just using AI.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to feel like we're more focused on the customer's problem. So I asked Cloud, like, what do you think about using AI in this brand positioning statement? And it was like, oh yeah, that is a good catch. Like, yeah, it wouldn't recommend that we should, instead of using AI, we should pivot it as this is more of a human-centric solution we're introducing into the market.
Okay.
So yeah, that was one thing I liked about it. The other challenge that I had was there are multiple instances where it had to tell me to try and maybe check back in the next 30 minutes or 1 hour because I ran out of something. So it's
Tokens.
like,
Yep.
yeah, so that was like an opportunity for me to take a break. And then I was looking into the possibility of integrating cloud copilot with my cell phone such that whenever it's done, maybe I'm ready to start using the app, or maybe I'm running something in the background, it will send me a notification on my phone that, yep, this stuff is ready. But I don't think that feature is available yet for the pro plan. But I think that is something that I'm hoping, down the line that will be available.
Excellent. Excellent. So that sounds like a great experience. I am working on pulling up here as well. I don't know if you want to show anything that you worked on. It's fine if you don't. But I'm working on
Yeah,
also pulling up some stuff that I worked on, or that I
yeah.
started here on the show last week. But you should hang on. Let me make sure that you can share your screen. Hang on.
Okay.
Zoom has completely changed their UI, and they now require more clicks to do anything than you ever needed before. If you haven't gotten the new update yet, you're going to despise it. Zoom is not a sponsor of Product Coffee. All right. You're now a co-host, Mansoor. You can
Yeah.
share your screen if you like.
Okay. Let me bring this forward.
And it'll take Devin a minute to get it up here for those of you that are out there watching on YouTube. We'll have it up here on the screen in just a moment for you.
Yeah, please let me know once you can see.
Andrew's got a thumbs up.
Okay.
Oh, can you see the slide?
We can see it in Zoom. Yes. And here it is
Okay.
on YouTube as well. So you're good.
Cool, cool. Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, the name of the company is Sotivo, and this is based off of the fact that I mean, in the airline industries, there is a problem. I mean, one of the challenge we identified was people have a challenge getting their money back from the airline due to cancellation. So this solution is focused on airline dispute resolution, and then we're going to be having folks to pay $29 flat fee to get their money back from the airline due to a cancellation that is not as a result of the individual's fault. So and this what you're looking at is the Sortivo investor pitch deck, and then here, based off of the market analysis I've done so far, we noticed there are about, according to the Department of Transportation, there are about 950,000 plus complaints per year, and 2% of passengers decide to pursue the dispute resolution from
Mm-hmm.
the company. And then on an average, this each of those disputes is worth about $250. And then as of now in the US, we do not have direct US competitor. And this is based off of the market analysis that I've done, although none of this is vetted yet. Everything is on cloud. And then the next slide you're looking at is overview of what I've just said earlier on, whereby we have about 950K complaints so far, which is a high record. 2% of passengers are eligible to formally pursue a compensation. And then it takes about 6 to 12 months to, for the case to close. And then about each of those cases is worth an average of 250, $250. So the gap here is that is the gap is we're dealing with is the passengers' right and what actually they receive as a result of their money back. And this is what Sotivo is trying to solve. And then again, I'm just going to go through this real quick. Again, this is a concierge service. For now, we're going to be charging $29 between the first 3 months. And then subsequently, we're going to move on to a business model whereby we only charge a percentage if we're able to help the customer to recover their money. And we're promising that this is going to be simple, this is going to be fast, and we're going to have human in the loop. However, the plan is to use AI as much as possible for to automate the workflow, but the human in the loop will be responsible for making the final validation before the claims are sent out. And then right here is more or less the market analysis that I've done so far.
Mm-hmm.
So for this particular market that I'm looking at, it's about 29 million service sum. And then again, this is really good compared to the other projects that I've worked on. And then right here is looking at the various business model. Model number one is charging a flat fee of $29 once we launch. And then 3 months down the line, if some of the assumptions that I've made is appropriately validated, then we'll move on to model B, whereby we only charge a percentage of the money that we're able to help the
Mm-hmm.
customer to recover. And moving on is the persona that we ended up with. Although I started off with a five persona, but based off of the plan, which is to launch this business within 0 to 90 days, we ended up with a Priya that is our anchor persona. So as you can see, Priya is a marketing coordinator. She's 28 years. She works from Houston. This is her income details. She's a very she uses a lot of social media, TikTok,
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, whatnot. So what makes this persona very interesting is she loves to travel, and then she had her flight canceled, and then she lost $200, and then she gave up on the airline calls after multiple back and forth. I'm sure this is something that most of you have experienced before. And as a result of that, she decided to start posting, venting out on social media. So the plan here is we're going to target prayer at from using whatever social media is using. Mostly people use TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, whatever. And this is the strategy of how we're going to target a persona called prayer. And
Now,
then this is sorry.
was Priya rooted in real customer interviews? Is this all predictive from the LLM?
This is all predictive. This is a composite persona.
Okay, so you'd still go and do the interviews to pull in and use the some of the analysis tools there to actually validate and make sure that this is real. Uh,
But
but it's still pulling the information together, building out the framework for you, and presenting it very nicely.
right, right. Yeah. I mean, the actual way of doing this is to do what they call the primary market research, where you interview people. I mean, since this is going to be a B2C play, ideally you want to target about 50 or 200 interviews.
Mm-hmm.
But since, we don't have time for that, given the short time we have
Sure.
at hand. So this is just more or less like a composite
Mm-hmm.
persona based off of the secondary market research.
This is great. So
Yeah.
you covered a lot of ground with Claude last week.
Oh yeah, I mean, just yeah, but I mean, the cool thing about this is there's so many stuff. I mean, especially when you get into the financials. I mean, this is where you now bring in your knowledge of business model, whether you want to use a revenue model or cost model, and then fine tune it up to a point. Again, all this still needs to be validated
Mm-hmm.
with an actual human being.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what I've been up to. I'm happy to talk about the specifics of what I've done. But yeah.
That's great. Anything about the experience that you didn't care for? The way Claude Cowork worked with you? Anything that you wish it had done differently or that didn't work out the way you hoped?
Nothing really that significant. Although the PowerPoint that is generated, I mean, I felt like it's good. I mean, putting it side by side with Google Notebook LM,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Google Notebook LM is way better. But I think this is something that at least it gives me a structure of okay, this is where to start from,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah. But other than that, I didn't really. There's nothing much that I could really point to, and I like the fact that you have the app is designed in such a way that you have the co-work on a different tab, and then you have the chat window, so you can still bounce back between chat and co-work. So
Excellent.
that way, it doesn't feel like you are tied down to a
Yeah.
single window. Yeah.
So I'll tell you also from my own experience, and I can't show this, but I have used successfully and with great results actually Claude Cowork. I've given it a PowerPoint template that is one of my clients' internal templates, and I've built out what I wanted in the presentation in great detail. I just kind of put it in a markdown file and taught, slide one's going to have this, slide two's going to have this. Here's a table that I want, and had Claude Cowork build that out inside a pre-existing PowerPoint template, and it did
Right.
a beautiful job. I was really impressed. I probably spent once it built that out for me, I probably spent about maybe 20 minutes refining it and tweaking it. I had given it all the information that I wanted in the presentation. I wasn't having it do research for me at that point, but it still shortcut the building of a presentation deck by
Mhm.
literally probably 2 hours. I was really impressed and pleased with that. Last week,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing I noticed is have those integration with other tools. I mean, I've not really played a lot with other AI tools that to that extent because I try to do everything within the tool itself. But with Claude, I mean, you can easily integrate it with websites. You can integrate it with your coding tool. Now, like a few minutes ago before this presentation, I was thinking, okay, I want to build an app on Apple Store,
Mm-hmm.
and then walk me through how to get this going. And then it started prompting me, do I have Do I have a technical background and all those stuff? And then it just feels like I could easily do everything within Cloud without necessarily have to like bounce between multiple app at the
Mhm.
same time.
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience. I'm glad you were able to take that and do something with it. Next week, I know we've got Sean back here. He was one of our other winners from last week, and he's going to share what he's learned with it. And Sean is, I know you've got a background. I think you've worked in some hardware product management as well, if I'm not mistaken, Mansoor.
Right.
So has Sean. He's been both on the software, and now he's working in hardware. He's actually working on drones. But I don't know if he's used it for work or just kind of run through some use cases, but we're going to hear from Sean next week and possibly Carla as well. Yeah, it looks like we'll have Carla back here. Hey, Carla, I see you out there. Carla will be back with us next week as well to share what she learned with Claude Coworks. So hope you continue to get value out of it and have a lot of fun with it, and it helps accelerate you in some of your goals.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Now we got a few more minutes before we go live, so I want to open up the floor and invite anyone who's here with us to introduce yourself. And the way I do this is, if your camera is on, I'll go back and I'll look for people that maybe we haven't heard from in a little while, and ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what has your attention right now. You might want to tell us about something that you're doing with Claude Cowork or with some other agentic tool of some sort, or just tell us what has your attention in the vein of product management. What are you working on right now? What's something that you're trying to figure out, or what's something that you've solved and you want to celebrate with us? And I want to start with one of our newest Product Copy Premium members. One of our insiders actually is Dominique McCarthy. Welcome, Dominique. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Great to see you.
I thought I might. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, my computer ran an upgrade right before I started the meeting, so never know what the upgrade is going to bring. But I'm Dominique McCarthy. I'm a product delivery leader, helping large-scale agile teams deliver great products. So right now, I am working at a large company, and we're shifting focus to be more product-centric. So standing up a product office with product owners and product enterprise architects. So that's my focus right now.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Glad to have you here. And thanks for being a part of the community. Good to see you this morning. Let's see who's next. Let's jump over to Andrew. Hey, Andrew, how you doing?
Hey, Brett. Good morning. Hey, I'm Andrew Fuquay. I am in a product group at Broadcom. I've got some responsibility for a couple of products. Both of them were fairly recently, newly created. The more recent one is called VIA, Broadcom VIA. It's an AI platform what's got my attention is ensuring that what it does is repeatable, reliable, dependable. So I'm all into ontologies and system instructions and evals, and trying to make sure the results are good. Mm-hmm. So that's what's got my attention these days.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit more, if you can. I don't know if you can talk a little bit. I discovered, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, a plugin for Claude Code called Ontology specifically, and what it does is it builds the core skill into Claude to build out an ontology about the project that you're working on, so that it's not relying on the text-based files to go back and search through everything. It's got a really fast data structure to go back and understand the references to the things that you're working on. Tell me how that's working. Tell me how you're thinking about that concept.
Our initial subject matter is data from Jira, Rally software, Clarity, and other types of project portfolio management tools. Mm-hmm. So it's it's a well-known data set that we can help AI, that we can start with. We can create an ontology and tune it and start with something that's ground truth, known good. but then after that, a next phase would be able to get an organization's ontology, their subject matter, the terms they use. You know, if it was, let's say it was a Disney or Hershey or an airline or an insurance company or whatever, they've got terminology and ontologies around their business.
Mhm.
So these are all in the space around helping product leaders and portfolio managers and executives manage um, their projects, what they're funding to build, and also because VMware is a big thing at Broadcom, will be all of these products together are going to be helping identify the value of your VCF spend.
Mm-hmm.
And tie, it's not just like, oh, we've got, you spend 20 millions on VMs, but for what purpose? So we're going to be able to identify what business applications and how much revenue they bring in that's being realized by each of those VMs. So I don't know, that's just one example, and I've gone into the weeds and rambled.
No, that's okay. I think that's really a great way to demonstrate the concept that you're talking about, and to share that with others. And I had not even really considered a technical approach to managing ontology like that until very recently. So it perked my ears up when you were talking about it. So thanks.
Yeah, we hope to be able to have AI assist customers in feeding their example data and create an ontology from it with AI assist.
Yep.
So
Andrew, Jeffrey Costa goes, evals are the new PRD in chat. What are your thoughts since you've been having fun with this lately?
There's a Shreya and what's his name have a great popular course that's mentioned all over the internet on evals. I've been through the course once, and some of it was there was a lot of great aha moments, but then I'm left like, oh, there's more I still don't know and have to learn. So I'm gonna go through it multiple times, retake it. But I don't know what to say beyond that at the moment.
Yep. Okay. I might want to draft Jeffrey and say, hey, that's a great quote. It's t-shirtable.
Right.
It's also a great topic for a product copy session. I might draft you to come talk about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Excellent.
It's with the advent of AI, it's the roteness of writing a PRD that no one's going to read at 12 pages is ridiculous. Because AI is the administrative guide that helps you, put that all together in a seamless way so that hopefully your PRDs are smaller. But if you're spreading AI like peanut butter, as I like to say, on your product, you're going to have to do some evals to be able to understand, like, what's the actual end result that's getting back to the user, and is it hallucinating it? An oversimplification of it.
Sure.
But there's rigor behind it, and to me, that's becoming more and more important. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing is, and we talk about it all the time, but I'm really excited about some of the tools that are available right now and how they do truly help in some cases accelerate difficult work by letting you focus on the thinking and the inputs, and letting AI help to aggregate and analyze and shine lights in corners that you might have missed. But it does it so confidently that it's still, you mentioned hallucination. It's still, you have to constantly watch and pay attention. You can't just delegate to AI and let that be done. There is value in learning to use these tools effectively, but not outsourcing all your brain to it. I think Jerry mentioned something last week about what is the right work to turn off your brain for versus maintaining. And there's a lot to be considered in that.
Yeah, I'm sharing a little snippet that I think about a lot. I forgot who the presenter was,
It's true.
but irrespective of what tool you're using, the work is ultimately yours.
Yep. That's a great quote too. All right. So we are at the top of the hour. I certainly would like to get to more people as well, but we're gonna move on into our main program. Before we do that, though, Allison, you're here. I would love to get a book club update and tell everybody what's going on with the book club. We had an interesting discussion on Friday and decided to keep going with this book a little further.
Yeah. So thanks, Jason. Hi, everyone. Good morning to you. So we've been reading Money Stories by Rich Marinoff, and he was here a few weeks ago on Coffee to talk with us about oh, look, Steve, that's extra credit. You brought you brought the previous book. That's fantastic. So just write what's the possible addressable market or risk of not pursuing an idea or an opportunity in our business. So really excited to have that conversation. We've role played. We've talked about how folks are putting those together, money stories together within their own bodies of work, and where they're facing challenges or wanting to dig into how we surface and tell that story. The conversation book club is typically 30 to 45 minutes, 30 minutes because of my schedule at the end of last year, but we've definitely gone to 45 or an hour before. And the group left the session on Friday but we want more. So we are going to do one more session. At least, and perhaps a bit more of a working session. So I would say if you're curious or interested, book club is the place for you. You don't have to read. If you work in product or near product, there's a good chance that you have something to contribute. And we're really looking forward to having one more session. I don't think we have the calendar event on the books just yet, but we'll work on that. The robots behind the scenes have been kerfuffling around, as Claude might say.
Yep.
I love that. This is the fun thing with Claude. He has all the fun words while he's waiting and cooking up your next great response. So,
Yep. And so if you haven't read Money Stories, by the way, if you want to join, so it'll be next Friday. I think it's next Friday, which is Good Friday. So, and I know there was some question as to whether we're going to meet that day or go another week out for that or not. So
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm at the mercy of just being upright. So I will, if you say next Friday, cool.
We'll get that on the calendar.
That seems like eons from now for me. So
the main point I wanted to make is, even if you have not read Money Stories yet and you want to participate in this discussion, the book is 88 pages long. It's very thin. It's very fast read. It's really well organized. You can consume it quickly and then go back and reference the content as you're starting to put these techniques into play. And then our book club group has been not only reading the book and discussing the book, but as Allison said, practicing and putting this to work with their real world work and sharing it with each other and sharing what they learned and guiding each other through it. So really, really powerful opportunity, and encourage you to join that. And then after that one, we're going to be starting a new book a couple weeks later. And that's going to be the book that we're going to be talking about today is Steve Johnson's brand new book, Customer Conversations. I think it came out in February or maybe late January. There it is.
I'll do Steve one solid, and I'll yep. He beat me to it. Of course, he beat me to it.
All right. So
I appreciate that you had it.
Absolutely.
So before we get started with Steve, and Steve is our guest today, before we get started with that, I want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. We go live every week here on YouTube and Zoom, and we do that in large part thanks to all of our sponsors. Today's sponsor actually is Product Growth Leaders, which is actually Steve's company. We're not doing the book because of Product Growth Leaders sponsorship. We're doing the book because Steve's a great writer with great insights, and he's talking about a topic that everybody needs help with. How do we have good, effective customer conversations? But all we ask that you do is get to know all of our sponsors by visiting the links that are in the chat or on the YouTube page there. Get to know what these sponsors do. Look at their careers pages, see if there's an opportunity that you might be interested in. look at what they offer and see, do you have an opportunity to recommend or refer them to a friend or colleague to just as a thank you for supporting your community. You don't have to do business with them, but we do like you to get to know them. And if you have the opportunity to let them compete for your business, please do so to thank them. So thanks to all those sponsors. Thanks for Podium Studios for hosting us here in Marietta. And up next, the next thing that I want to talk about is if this is your first time here, I see a couple of new names in the Zoom, and I can't see your name if you're out there on YouTube. But if this is your first time here, one of the things that we do, this is a community. It's not a webinar. We're a community meetup. And one of the things that we do for the community is we take notes together. We have a Google Doc, and you can just go to productcoffee.com/notes, and that'll drop you into that doc, and then you can hit the little star and save it to your own Google Drive, save a link to it to your own Google Drive, and we'll leave it there forever. So as you take notes today, take notes in the shared document and drop your LinkedIn profile at the bottom so that we can thank you for helping out with that. If you think of a book or an article or an insight that you think others would benefit from, drop it in the notes document. There are very few rules, just rules of good decorum, but would love to have you participate and join us in that part of that dimension of the discussion as well. Okay, with that being said, let's get into today's session. As I said a moment ago, we've got my good friend Steve Johnson here, and Steve is the godfather of product management training. I think he probably created the training that almost everyone in this room, if you had any form of product management training, you have either directly or indirectly learned from Steve's work. And Steve has got a new book out called Customer Conversations, Your Product Management Superpower. And we're going to talk with Steve a little bit about that today and let him share what he was thinking about when he wrote the book and some of the key concepts. And we'll do some Q&A. And that's going to kick off our next book club, which will start in a few weeks. So you can order a copy of that. If you get it on Kindle, it's only 99 cents right now. You can get the hardcover, the paperback, which is beautiful as well. And we've got a link right here for you to grab it with as well. All right. So with that being said, Steve, welcome back. How are you?
I'm delightful. Thank you.
Great. And you can also
Wednesday,
get the book right there at that
at
address there.
What else would you want? It's Wednesday, and I'm at Product Coffee, so that's delightful.
Yep, couldn't ask for much better. So we had talked about. I know you said you had a few slides, or we can just talk about the book a little bit. Let's just talk about it. So tell me, we talked about this a little bit last week on the first cup and the value of really good customer conversations anyway, and because one of the things that we were doing is we were demonstrating the Claude capability to aggregate research and interviews into some real meaningful insights. And one of the things that we talked about is how many companies and people, product managers, aren't really having good customer conversations. They're maybe paying lip service to it, faking their way through it, or just flat out not even pretending and just saying, hey, we've got the internal sources that gives us everything. Tell us about what inspired you to write this book and and some of the thoughts that led you to where you are today.
I feel like I've spent the last 30 years telling people they need to represent the customer by knowing the customer. And the reason I wrote the book was I'm encountering just so many people who are relying on secondary information, particularly with AI. And one of the stories I may or may not have told in the book is when I moved here to Gainesville, Virginia, we had one great hardware store right across the street. And every day, every weekend I go over and you had to like open the doors with your hands, and there was a little bell that dingled when you walked in, and they'd say, "Hey Steve, what are you working on?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm working on this. I'm just going to pick up a few things." And they'd look at my cart and they'd say, "Oh yeah, everything in your cart is wrong. Let's start over. Tell me about your project and I'll give you the tools you need." And I loved it. And then within a year, like 6 other hardware stores opened, all chain stores, Home Depot and a Lowe's and a Builder Square. And a year after that, all of them closed. But by then, my hardware store had gone out of business. And I realized that they had all read the same secondary research. That this area was growing. I mean, when we moved here, it was the hardware store and a 7-Eleven and a racetrack gas station, and then we're booming, and everybody read the same research and everybody came to the same conclusion and everybody opened a store, and then they realized there wasn't enough business here to support 6 stores, and so they closed them all. And so now I have no store. And that kind of that kept coming back to me as I see people saying, I don't have to talk to customers, I just have to talk to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is based on past, right? And in a recent training, and I do a lot of like coaching with slides as opposed to slides with a little bit of coaching. And I asked, how many people have talked to a customer this week? And the answer was none, right? I said, okay, well, hang on. How about this year? And they said, and most of them said none. They're relying on salespeople saying this is a feature my customer needs, or customer support saying I talked to a guy, or executives who say, God spoke to me in a dream. And yet they don't have the first person experience with customers. And I think in many cases, they don't even know that's part of the job. I guess that's the real bugaboo is if you've never seen the power of a customer conversation, maybe you don't realize how important it is to have firsthand experience. It's kind of like, learning to ride a bike. You can read a book about it, but, actually you just have to ride the bike and you learn something that you never could have read about. And so that's what inspired me. I see chaos in product management that I've been, working with teams over the years to eradicate with process and clarity of role. But as I keep coming back to it, it's like this one thing, this understanding of the market is the thing that most product owners and many product managers are lacking.
Yeah, and I think to your point is due to the fact that even those who know they're supposed to do it, there's often a lack of confidence in the how to do it, how to have a good customer conversation, right?
Also true. I mean, step 1 of any 12-step program is to admit you have a problem.
Right.
Right. And so that we started there, but then it was like, okay, so fine. I remember I knew a guy who would say, just call up a random customer and say, how's it going? And I'm like, no, let's not do that. That's too random, right? And so that's when I kind of realized, there's a structure to this of what are you trying to figure out? Are you trying to figure out who buys our product or who doesn't? You start with a research objective. And so anyway, without reading the book aloud, it's you have to have an objective to your research, and then you have to build a short plan. And I've got a whole bunch of great questions in the book. And my only fear is that people were going to take the interview guide and say, okay, well, let's ask all 47 of these questions.
So, Steve, I do have a follow-up question for you.
Sure.
Very similar to the story you talked about. The hardware store told you you weren't doing this right. Most of the time, the customers don't know what they want.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Why am I interviewing them?
Good point. And the answer, well, some of you have heard me say this before. When a customer tells you what feature they want, they are almost always wrong. When a customer tells you what problem they have, they're almost always right.
Yeah, I like how Manesh teed that up for you.
Thanks. And you know, I had a story I think is in the book. I had my first experience as a product manager was tremendous. I mean, it set such a tone for my entire career. I sat down with developers, my development team, and said, I really want to do well here. You know, how can I contribute? And I was terrified of their answer. You know, I'm not a lawyer, so I didn't know what the answer was going to be first before I asked it. And they said, well, what we really need to know is what problems our customers are facing. And I went, oh, great. I know how to do that. And I was afraid they were going to say, you know, tell us how big the button should be and what hex code it should have. They didn't want specs. They didn't want me to tell them what features to build. They just wanted to hear about problems in the market. So anyway, I had a number of experiences early on in my career of sitting down with customers and hearing what they meant, not what they said, or watching them do the work and realizing they had a problem. And I may have told this story before, but I volunteered at an organization a few years ago, and I said, you know, hey, I'm a computer guy, you know, I'm technical. What do you need? How can I help you? And they said, oh, great. Could you set up these computers and connect the printer to Wi-Fi? We can't figure that out. And I'm like, okay, fine. You know, I'll do that. So I'm doing that. And meanwhile, I'm hearing these volunteers swearing at their computers. And finally, I went over and I said, you know, what is wrong here? And they said, we keep encountering these corrupted records in our donor database. And then we have to retype it all. And I'm like, all right, well, show me, you know. And they showed me this thing, and it was like 20% of the database had Mr. in the title field, or Dr. or Mrs. in the title field. But if there was an ampersand, everything else, like if it was Mr. and Mrs. or Dr. and Dr., whatever, if there was an ampersand, all the fields were off by 1. And I'm like, you know, so I looked at 2 or 3, they were all consistent. And what had happened was some volunteer had loaded a database and hadn't done, you know, good parsing of it, and then left town. So 20% of their database was corrupted. I wrote an automator script to move things where they belonged, and they went nuts. They were like, let's find some more. You know, they kept going through the database, finding records to fix and shouting hooray every time they fixed it. But the thing that killed me was like, why didn't you tell me about that? And they just went, well, computers suck. You know, why would it wouldn't occur to them that the computer could be part of the solution? So I did do what the customer asked, but I also found this enormous problem that was highly irritating that I could fix actually in much quicker time than setting up all those computers and clicking OK 72 times.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say this is more of a science or an art of getting that information out of everybody?
You know, I don't think it's, well, I guess the thing is, I don't think that it's that hard. You know, it's, well, you know, Yogi Berra said you can observe a lot just by watching.
Okay. So follow up from that. If it's not that hard, why don't we do it? The assumption is that we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now,
well, I think
to
the
the
first
audience,
thing is,
to the audience, if you could just post if you guys do or don't,
Yeah.
in the chat, that would be appreciated, just to understand whether it is hard or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Drop in the chat. What keeps you? Does something keep you from from freeing up the cycles to actually do this kind of observation? What helps you move forward with having real customer conversations? So what's in your way, and then what's helped you be successful? And I see Jerry.
Jerry's got his hand up.
Oh my God.
Sorry, who had a hand up?
Jerry.
Jerry. Go ahead, Jerry.
It's the OG Jerry Odenwalder, not
real Jerry.
not the real Jerry. Steve, I know that story was in the draft. I don't know if it made the final cut, but the thing that stood out to me when I read that story was not so much that you listened to them, because in the story, what you listened to them do was cuss at the computer.
Right.
That was what you listened. So if you think about like listening to customers, you heard them having a problem. It was the next step that actually led to the discovery, right? It was going the next step and going and talking to them and finding out what it was and realizing that it was a solvable problem.
Hmm.
Um, so I think when we talk about customer conversations, I put it in the chat earlier. From my experience, I find people, because they're experienced in the domain, right? A lot of times companies are hiring product managers that have experience in the domain. Like, I need a product manager with 20 years experience in the airline industry. As soon as you pull that experience in, there's your bias. That person
Right.
is that person is bringing to your company 20 years of what they did at some other company.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're never listening. They hear the cussing, but they're like, yeah, that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
They
Right.
throw their hands up. They don't go and ask the follow-up questions, or they're uncomfortable talking to the upset customer, so they don't ever talk to that upset customer because, like, that's that guy or that girl and we just don't want to talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, and I also think I think there are multiple reasons why people don't do this, and I think we should drill down on that a little bit. But certainly there is an inclination for management as well as product managers to say, you, the product manager, are supposed to be an expert. So you should already know what the problems are. But if I were doing that uh, volunteer gig again, I think I skipped a step. So I heard they had a problem. I observed the problem. I talked to them about the problem. The part I didn't do was ask them if there was any value in me fixing it. I went straight to fixing it. And so, in that case, it was very simple.
But you were 12 years
Uh,
old
it,
at
it
the
cut the
time.
profanity out for sure. So you knew it was.
Yeah, but the part. So anyway, the part I think all of us miss is, before I go to fix this, I have a strategy to fix this. Before I do, would you like me to do that? Would you be, in our case, would you be willing to pay me to do that in some way? And so I think even there, I rushed, as we all do. I rushed to solutioning.
You were volunteering too, Steve. So even if they were going to pay you, they were going to pay you in $0 anyway.
Exactly.
Right. So justification right there. But I think
They doubled this.
I think Jerry and Steve bring out something that I think is paramount to customer interviews, is curiosity. So Steve was listening there, right? But he was curious to find out, why was Jason yelling at his computer?
Yep.
And so in that process, if you got this 47 questionnaire and that's all you do, and you're not curious about something else that they talked about, I think is where a lot of people also miss the boat from that perspective.
And
Yeah, so your
yes.
argument there is a little bit, how much do people do this as theater? It's like, yes, I talked to a customer, the end.
Yeah,
Well,
one of the things that you talk about, you talked about a moment ago, and as well, is the difference between just sticking to the script and saying, here's my 47 question bank. I'm going to ask all these questions, and versus asking a question, but also observing cues that are not even necessarily embedded in the answer. So it's not just a curiosity, it's training yourself not to put yourself in a lane where you're only focused on getting that linear question after question after question progression resolved. You're here for the purpose of discovery and to identify opportunities. You're learning things. I think I've got I've got Carla's got her hand up, and I saw Jeffrey trying to jump in as well. So let's jump over to Carla and then Jeffrey.
To put my question in the chat. My question is, has anyone ever set up some channel for employees to give feedback on the product? And what I mean is, when I worked at Delta, I constantly, if anyone ever found out that I worked at Delta, they would just totally capture me and tell me everything that they thought about whatever program was going on at Delta. Like, for example, when we launched the Diamond status, you know, I was traveling a lot to the Minneapolis location, and I was, anytime someone sat next to me that was a Diamond and they found out I worked at Delta, they were like, oh, well, let me tell you about this experience, this experience. And so, you know, I just would be proactive and go to the business owners of that area and say, this is feedback I've heard from Diamond members. And then they were able to use that. Or one time I was at the Atlanta Film Festival, and there was someone who was an assistant to a big time celebrity. I don't know if you recognize Ian Somerhalder for Vampire Diaries. And he found out I worked at Delta and just like, oh, well, this is what they need to do for, you know, celebrity travel and all this. So I found the guy who was starting up a project with VIP travel. And later on, when I happened to be working on a Paramount movie and needed to book travel, or no, I was doing the accounting part for Tiffany Haddish's travel. I found out Delta was using this program, and a lot of the stuff that I had told them, you know, I don't know if it all came from me, but I could tell that they were inputting a lot of the stuff that we discussed. So, you know, I'm just curious. I had to be proactive to find the business owners of those areas. So has anyone ever set up something for employees to just say, you know, this is stuff we're hearing, you know, something like that?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, a lot of us have. I'm actually reminded of a scene from The Office where Michael sets up a employee feedback box outside of his office, and they're all just complaints about him. I think that customer support would certainly say, you know, they get a lot of feedback on things that are causing friction. And I've always been very lucky to have customer support anxious to provide me feedback. But the real challenge of employee feedback is they so often come to you with a solution. And our challenge is to go back to, you know, like, wait, what problem were we trying to solve? And my wife is sick of that question. I mean, it occurs 3 times a day for 35 years or 40 years or however long we've been married. But every part of my life, people say, well, I need you to do this thing. And I find myself going, well, wait, what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah, I've got go ahead.
Oh, I just, yeah, I mean, I was having this discussion with someone before. I went, my undergrad is in industrial engineering, and I went to Georgia Tech, and we took a class called Man and Machine Design. And one of the 4 things that we discussed in the class is that the user doesn't know what they want. So anytime I've ever been on an IT project and you're you know, documenting requirements or whatever, they're always saying, put a button here, you know, they're always solutioning. So you always have to go back a step. We're solutioning. I want to concentrate on the problem or the functionality that you want. Totally.
And, you know, and even before that, it's like, well, I was working with a team recently, and they had a persona called the user. And I'm like, no, that's not a persona. Tell me about, you know, a real kind of person. Like, you know, you were talking about travel plans for celebrities. That's a very unique, I think, persona. I mean, I can't imagine what would happen on a plane if George Clooney sat in, coach. It'd be horrible for him and for everybody who worked there. But anyway, we start with, what kind of people are we trying to help? Then we go to, what problems do they have? And then there's the step that I skipped, which is, okay, and if we built this solution, would it solve your problem? And I think we skip 1, 2, 3 of those steps when we're doing research. And there was a question earlier about how many, and the answer is greater than 0.
Yeah, I have not worked at Chick-fil-A, but I have interviewed with them very extensively. So they have a program, and I don't know if anyone's on the call has worked with Chick-fil-A, but they have a program where employees can come up with an idea and present the idea. So anyway, I guess that's what I basically was saying, that, and I brought this up on the last call, help desk, getting input from help desk. So just basically, I don't know, employees get so much feedback from so many people if we can tap into that somehow without them having to be super proactive,
I think that's a blind. Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't want to say you, the product manager, are the only legitimate source of ideas based on the limited number of customers you talk to. We absolutely should be hearing from salespeople, from support desks, from customer services, implementation services. And I've got a story in the book about feedback I got from our installs team that ended up creating a whole new way of delivering our product. So we're not the only source, but we need to, somebody said we need to invent based on the feedback that we're getting. I think it's rolled by, but anyway. And Jeffrey, did you have a point?
Yeah, no, just a follow-up point. Like, I really do think that CS and maybe even more, customer support are sources that PMs don't frequently mine enough. And with the advent of AI, is go get yourself a Jira dump of tickets that opened up and go look for patterns. Like, it's a very simple thing, and look for recurring patterns, because AI can do that exceptionally well. And use that as an input to product decisions. In most of the companies I work for, CS puts together a monthly, here's what we heard from customers spreadsheet that they circulate, and they break it down by product area or feature area. That's another great source. But I always look at these customer conversations as you're doing archaeology, right? You've got a hammer, and you can easily move the soil away from the fossil, but you are just as likely to hit that fossil with the hammer and break it if you are not careful about how you ask questions to customers. Those questions have to be more about, tell me about a time when X. Well, what happened? What did you do when X happened? And then you're listening for I used Hubba Bubba and chicken wire to do this. And to me, that's where light bulbs go on. I'm like, okay, there's something we could be doing better here.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the terms that I like a lot is friction. Finding friction in the buying process as well as the using process. And, just think of yourself, the number of times. Well, here's something I do like 5 times a day. I'll take some text from somewhere, paste it into Word, unformat it, and then go paste it into Excel. Or when I do an article for my blog, it's like I take it from Word, I paste it into the blog as plain text, and then I go back through and reformat everything because of whatever reason. And it's just like, I don't have enough. I feel like I should make better use of my time than reformatting documents that were previously formatted.
Yeah.
Steve, Kim Proctor in the chat asks, makes a statement. I've done customer interviews that lead me to great ideas to help grow the business, and then they did not really want to do that work, surprisingly. So
Who was the they in that story? They, the company, did not want to do the work, or they, the customer, didn't want to pay for it?
she elaborates to the people who would do the work did not want to do it. Not our priority, is what she said. So the question, I guess, and Kim, feel free to get on mute, unmute yourself if you like. But I think that my question from that comment is, what can, from your experience prior to the building of the internet, since you've been doing this, how do we extract that while we're doing those interviews to identify, okay, we got great ideas, but what is the barrier? Like what's holding them up from executing? And I'm making several assumptions here, Steve.
Well, yeah, trying to parse that into multiple parts here is, well, going back to my original list, I guess. First of all, is this coming from a persona that we care about? Secondly, do we understand the problem? And then thirdly, is this the solution that will address their problem in a way that's viable for our business? I mean, ultimately, we want to build products and features that are vital to the buyer, valuable to the user, and viable for our business. And not everything is viable, but then there is the challenge of, you go to your technical team and they say, well, that's cute and all, but, we want to work on something else. Well, that's a management problem, not a research problem.
Right.
Jerry, what did you want to say?
Oh, you kind of touched on it there, Steve. The business aspect of it is very important in all of this as well. Does what the customer's asking for align with your business model? Another, I know people get tired of hearing my version 1 stories, but they're really good ones, and there's a lot of good ones in there. We had an ideas portal. A lot of companies have ideas portals, and the top voted idea was for a licensing model that we knew would put us out of business. But all of our customers wanted it. And it's like, so of course, like we were never going to implement that. Now, what we did was we came up with a very creative strategy, and hats off to the legal team and the sales team that figured this out so that it wasn't a product problem. They came up with a strategy, a licensing strategy that fit our model, that gave the customer the behavior they wanted. But we never. But the idea that customers were asking for, we were like, we're not going to do that. So you've got to make sure that what it is you're going to build is going to be viable for your product. Totally. And the Aspire acronym comes to mind in all that as well, right? Like, can we do it, and is it going to be profitable for us?
Totally.
Yeah. And you should be terrified of at least one thing your customer is going to say to you in these calls that will blow up your business model, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Because you just evidenced. And you said, okay, well, we're not going to go that way, but we're going to give you this hybrid approach.
Yeah.
And I think that's valuable. I think asking those scary questions can lead to light.
And
you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
And the key there to that, Jeff, is, as Steve said earlier, it's when the customer asks for a feature or a specific way of solving their perceived problem, when they ask for a feature, they're most likely wrong. But if you can take that ask that the customer gave you and dig into the why and understand what is their real objective, what's the real pain, what's the real problem they're trying to solve, then you can reframe the whole conversation and get into the real product management work of saying, okay, here's the opportunity for us to go solve a customer problem. This is a customer that's part of our market, that's in the market that we want to solve problems for, so we can solve that problem, maybe not in the way they asked, but really get to the root of the problem. And I'm putting way more words around Steve's simple little, If they ask for a feature, they're probably wrong. If they tell you their problem, they're probably right. And I see, Christian, you've got your hand up, and then I want to pivot back. I got a couple questions I want to dig in with on with you, Steve. Christian, you're up.
Yeah, just on that topic, I was following the comments, and I think one of the key things in there is working for a small startup. And a lot of times I've seen in that there's an emphasis on features and things that sell, and there's less of an emphasis on customer experience and what would retain a customer. So, and a lot of times there's not a process for getting that user feedback back in the loop of, what are we going to do about that?
Mm-hmm.
Good point. And, I think as a product manager, you have a responsibility of representing multiple constituencies in your planning. Yes, we need some stuff to help people sell this thing, but we also need some stuff for users to generate customer satisfaction. And we need like what we call buying criteria or using criteria. Like for instance, I had never had a car with heated seats because I lived in Texas. You don't need heated seats in Texas. And so it was never part of my buying criteria. But somewhere along the way, I bought a nice car that had it already. And now I live in Virginia, and it's like, oh my, this is quite something, and now it's my buying criteria. But I had to get there the long way. I had to use it first in order to appreciate the value of it. But on the other hand, when I go to a dealership, which is the most horrible experience I ever experience, more than, say, medical procedures. I would rather have those than go to a dealership. I just want to know, does the car have CarPlay? I don't care if it has an engine. I assume it has an engine because the wheels go roundy round. I don't need to look at the engine and say, oh my gosh, there's wires in here. Isn't this great? I don't know anything about car engines, but I know I demand CarPlay, and I'm watching with, I'm just appalled at the idea that GM thinks they can write software better than Apple as they rebuild their entertainment system without CarPlay. But in a startup, yeah, we have to put in some stuff to, go the last mile by adding features. But if we're not careful, we turn our products into those Swiss Army knives where none of the features are any good, but there sure are a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. I will tell you a Swiss Army knife feature, Steve. If you love the heated seats, if you haven't put your hands on a heated steering wheel, you're not done yet. I
have never even heard of that until this week. I'm working with some clients that are in Canada, and they're like, you ain't seen nothing yet. And so,
yep.
And now I have a new buying criteria.
And don't leave out cool seats.
Oh, no, they're a must in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, yes.
So, Steve, I want to ask one of your favorite questions, actually, about customer conversations, your new book. What's the problem that you set out to solve?
Oh, you're turning the question right back at him.
I am.
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I wanted to solve for is expressing to most product owners and many product managers that this is not only part of the job, it may be the most important part of the job. As I look at product managers and their credibility in the organization, I in my experience, being the one that says, yeah, but we lost 17 deals last month because of this thing, or when I talked to Jim Brunke, the CTO of JP Morgan Chase, he told me this. Being the one who uses customer feedback as a way of convincing others builds credibility, and that's why the subtitle of the book is the Product Manager Superpower. Without that, then we're back to if all we have is data, let's use mine. I mean, if all we have is opinions, let's use mine.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And then the second part was to then, to make it easy. I encounter people who say they wish to do it, and they've got all sorts of friction going on, and just in terms of we're really busy reading aloud to developers from Jira, or we're really busy doing demos for salespeople because they understaff sales engineering. But once I convince them that it's the source of their credibility, the second part is, so how do you do it? And I think a lot of people look at it as, oh, this is a big thing. And it doesn't have to be. It's like, find somebody you want to talk to, and, talk to them. And, decide where you are in the research phase. Are you still trying to understand the persona? Are you still trying to understand the problem? Are you still trying to validate the solution? And then go picking through the questions at the end of the book to say, oh, I need to ask this one and this one and this one and this one. So I want it to come across as, this isn't difficult. You just need to make time for it. And again, I've had so many accidentally lucky experiences as a product manager. My first boss said, I'm not confident at all in the market information we have. I mean, we have salespeople giving us win-loss reports that say it's price, and yet I won't go down that path.
You can.
Well, real quick, in a survey last year, 68% of salespeople said that they lost deals on price, and only 12% of their customers said that.
Mm-hmm.
So when salespeople say it's what it is, they're almost always wrong too,
mm-hmm.
right? But anyway, I digress. My first boss said, I need you to be the expert on the customer. And to make it worthwhile, he tied my bonus to it. And so I had to make 10 calls each quarter. And in those days, most of those calls were not phone calls or video calls. They were face-to-face calls. And I generally tied them into a sales call. So I could justify the trip by going on a sales call and doing a demo and talking about the roadmap, which was basically all the stuff we were already doing. But anyway, then the next day I would call on a customer without the salesperson, and the salesperson would say, oh yeah, I don't need to go talk to them. They're losers. They never buy anything. And I'm like, that seems like the kind of person we should be talking to.
Yep.
But anyway, my bonus was tied to making 10 calls a quarter, and suddenly my wife is involved in managing Steve. She's like, hey, how are we doing on our bonus? Have you made your calls this quarter?
Isn't that amazing how that works?
I similarly, I had your sales experience, your sales call experience reminded me of a story earlier in my product management career. I was having a hard time breaking through some of that friction of getting out in the field and talking to customers and going along with the sales team. And I had one of our account managers said, hey, I want you to go with me to this customer and give them a roadmap presentation and get their enhancement, get their request list. And I said, okay, I'll make you a deal. I will go on this customer visit, which of course I wanted to go on the customer visit. There was no question about that. But I said, I will only do this if I get the first 30 minutes of the conversation and you don't ask or say a thing for the first 30 minutes. And she agreed to it. And we sat down with a law firm. It was a law firm in Boston. And we sat down with them, and I led the conversation for the first 30 minutes. And I dug into the issues. And I really got to do a really powerful customer interview before we even got to the roadmap. And in the course of this, they're throwing out, well, I want to be able to do this. And all of these were things that we could already solve that the salesperson had never heard about and had never heard the customer talk about because they were going in and they were doing the pitch. And so we dug in and we dug into some deep problems, and we got some great insights that we were able to use in the product. And from that point forward, that salesperson went back to the office and said, take Jason on your sales calls and shut up. So
yes, I and yet I want to caution people listening that what you learn on a sales call is not necessarily what you will learn if there's not a salesperson in the room.
That's true too.
Right. And I've gone on a lot of sales calls, and I'm good on sales calls, believe it or not. But when I'm on a sales call, it's like I'm part of the sales team. Mm-hmm. So be part of the sales team, and you might accidentally learn something, but don't consider that the only source of customer feedback.
Right. That's a great point. Thank you. So the second question I wanted to ask you, Steve, and there's lots of questions in the chat too, a couple that I wanted to jump back to, but I want to ask you also. We talked about the why you wrote Customer Conversations. And the next question that I'd really like you to lay out for everybody in our audience is if they pick up this book, and by the way, we're about to do a Product Coffee Book Club on this book, so we're going to be discussing it, reading along and discussing it with each other. But if you pick up this book and join in that read, when you walk away from this book, what are the things that you're going to have in your tool belt? What are the things you're going to learn? How is this going to change how you approach your role in product management?
Well, the first part of my answer is the same as my last answer. Mm-hmm. I mean, one thing you'll walk away with is, oh, shoot, I had no idea this was A, part of my job, and B, the most important part of my job and the source of my credibility. But then the second thing you'll walk away with is a pretty simple process of figuring out who you want to talk to, what do you need to learn, and what questions will drive you to that conclusion that you need to make. So it's not necessarily a cookbook of, this is how you do an interview, but it gives you the tools to do those interviews. And so at the end of the day, after reading the book, I hope you'll feel confident in engaging with a customer in a meaningful way that changes your decision making.
That's great. That's great. There was a very tactical question that I don't know if tactical is the right way to frame it, but Mansour asked much earlier in the call today, and I'm scrolling back through the chat to find it. He was asking how many people and who should be talking to the customers in a highly matrixed B2B environment. I don't know if you need him to expand on that question or not, but when we're talking about who has the customer conversations, how many people should be having them, what's your opinion on that, Steve?
Well, in the B2B world, there are a lot of people talking to the customer, despite the fact that the account manager or the sales rep is like, I own the customer. Mm-hmm. The reality is, we have customer success, we have customer support, we have sales. There are a lot of people talking to the customer. And so the caution I'll add to that whole thing is, yes, it is worthwhile as a product manager to reach out to a sales rep and say, hey, I would like to talk with JP Morgan. Is anything going on there I should know about? And they're like, oh yeah, we're in the midst of a 10-year renewal and, don't go anywhere near them. And that's good to know. I mean, the last thing you want to do is go in and say, hey, we're thinking about maybe adding some AI capabilities to our product in the next couple of years. I'd like to get your feedback. And they're like, well, wait a minute, I'll wait for that. And you're like, oh shoot, I just blew a deal. So one of the things I feel like I'm pretty sure I mentioned in there is in the book is check with a sales rep to make sure you're not breaking anything in terms of selling. Yeah. But in a B2B organization, nobody really owns the customer. The CRM owns the customer. Right? There's so many fingers in a B2B client relationship.
Also, another t-shirtable moment. The CRM owns the customer, the B2B organization. That's thank you. And if there's any more questions, pop them up, pop your hands up. We've got about 2 more minutes before we need to wrap up for the day. So we got time for about one more. I've also popped a session feedback survey in the Zoom. If you would take a moment before you leave today to answer those 3 simple questions, give us some feedback about what's working and some of the problems that we can help you solve here. And Manesh has his hand up.
Steve, how do you determine how to pick the right person to talk to at an organization or at a customer's perspective? I find that somewhat challenging as a follow-up a little bit, in the sense that, yes, we have maybe technical folks, maybe these other folks that use the application and this and that, the other. And I've also found where some companies are reaching out to customers and saying, I would want you to join my council and help me understand your problems and maybe even bounce some ideas back and forth. Obviously, you can't see all 5,000 customers. What are your thoughts on determining and picking, if you were the software vendor and you had to pick a customer to join your council, how would you go about doing that? What traits would you look for?
Yeah, had an answer until you added that last little bit. I love customer advisory boards, and I think you actually need 2, maybe more than 2, but at least 2.
Okay.
One is a council of buyers, senior people, and another is a council of users, of people who actually use the product. And I had a really funny one a few years ago. We had 10 CIOs of major financial organizations that you've probably heard of. And as Jeffrey points out, in my world, in B2B world, buyers and users are almost always different. But the buyers in my customer advisory board were saying, they wanted to craft our roadmap 3 years out. They didn't want to talk about whether we're going to add, a button on some screen somewhere, right? They were asking, are you going where we're going? What are your plans for AI? What are your plans for Linux? What are your plans for open source? Whatever. I mean, they were more strategic questions. And an interesting aspect of it was, at every break, the salespeople would come pouring into the room. So I hadn't thought to go off site, which was a mistake. And they were like, hey, are you going to be done here soon? I want to take you out. And finally, one of the CIOs came over and said, hey, I'm not here to party. We're here to guide you, to advise you, customer advisory council, right? And they weren't interested in going out to a strip club or whatever salespeople wanted to do. The other group was a group of users, of people who actually use it on a daily basis. And they're the ones that, ultimately became kind of power users and could give us guidance more at the feature level. But as part of the customer advisory board, they also agreed to have inbound phone calls from one of my product managers. So if I remember vividly, one of my guys had a question about some arcane security something or another. It's like, does it need to be 256 or 257 bits? Whatever it takes. I'm sorry, I should have done 220, 221 for those of you who know what I'm talking about. But anyway, they could reach out to the CIO of whatever and say, hey, we're thinking about implementing it in this way. How will that impact your organization? And that was a welcome phone call. Oh, shoot. I got so far down into Mr. Mom and the 220, 221, I forgot the third part.
That's okay. Would you say the segregation of these councils one would be focused on the why and the other one would be focused on the what and how. Meaning,
Sure,
if I'm talking
I'll
to
go
the
with that.
CIOs, you're focusing why are you doing what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the other council group would be how and because sometimes they're not aligned themselves.
Indeed,
Right.
indeed.
And then
And to
we're
that
trying to
point,
bring
I
them
did
together.
have one of the CIOs came over to me in that first the strategic council and said, either that guy leaves or I'm leaving. And I went, what is happening here? Are you guys competitors? And he's like, no, it's not that. He's talking about what he needs. I'm talking about what we need. And sure enough, I said, I went over to the other guy and I said, you're clearly smarter than everyone else here. Let me have you sit down to, with a sales rep and you guys go to that strip club.
Right. So that's another thing that you're looking for, right? From a trait perspective, right?
Mhm.
You need to get that person also, not just a selfish CIO that's trying to get his or her agenda through the process. It's something we have to
Agreed.
assess as well.
And I think most of them want to. It's like, I understand there's benefit to them.
Right.
If we are building a consistent product that's not customized, a standard product that's going to grow over time in concert with their growth over time.
Yeah.
As opposed to, build this thing for me in a short-term way. I think your point of why versus what is a really good one.
Well, thank you, Steve, is all the time we've got today. Once again, the book is Customer Conversations, Your Product Management Superpower by Steve Johnson, our very favorite and own Product Growth Leaders founder and author extraordinaire and product management troubadour. Yeah, we'll keep adding that one in there. You're not escaping it. So thanks everybody for being here. We will be back next week. And a couple of things that we've got next week is Carla and Sean will be here sharing what they've learned with their run at Claude Cowork. If you have not tried Claude Cowork out, once again, not a sponsor. We just love it. And I think a lot of people are not aware of the tool that if you've got a Claude subscription, you've already got access to this tool, and there's some really helpful things there. And so we're putting it through the ringer and learning what we can from it, but not being overly dependent on AI. So thanks everybody for being here. Have a great week. We will see you back next week at 11:30. Have a great week. Bye.